So I was in a used bookshop the other day and they had an entire separate shelf specifically for Canadian literature. And so I spent about a half hour combing through that to find the little treasures that were hidden in there. One of those treasures, which I showed you in a haul last week, was a Masque Aesop by Canadian author Robertson Davies. Robertson Davies is the author of the Salterton trilogy and the Deptford trilogy. The Deptford trilogy includes Fifth Business, probably his most famous novel. I had to read it in my grade 12 English class. It's the one novel of his that I think is known outside of Canada. But on to this, The Masque of Aesop. This is an annotated edition. The Masque of Aesop is a play that Robertson Davies wrote to be performed by a boys' school. It says right here, the play was written to be performed by the boys of the Preparatory School of Upper Canada College as part of the celebrations for their Jubilee year. So apparently this is scarce. So this is a fairly short play to read through, published in 1952. This specific edition was first published as an educational edition with footnotes by the author in January of 1955. The great thing about this play are the footnotes. There's footnotes scattered throughout the play, and many of them are quite humorous. The second footnote on the first page, for instance, reads, "I have merely put this footnote in to warn you against a slavish dependence on footnotes, appendices, prefaces, and similar bits of scholarly apparatus." And there's stuff like that all the way throughout. There's questions, the kind of things that you would probably ask a student if they were looking at this academically. On page 17, footnote 1 defines satire. Footnote 2 says, "Do you agree with this definition of entertainment? Or do you like entertainment which rouses your intelligence and stirs your emotion?" One of my favorite parts in here was the performance of a fable. So basically the premise here is that we have the god Apollo, and he's in his temple, and then some Roman citizens drag in this man that they say is guilty of blasphemy, and they want to execute him, and Apollo decides that he deserves a fair trial. And so he asks the man's name, and the man's name is Aesop, and it seems he's guilty of telling stories that the citizens feel are corrupting. And so Aesop tells a number of stories to defend himself during his trial. One of them includes the story of the town and city mouse, which I'm sure you've all heard. The one I liked the most was a fable about the parts of the body. Now this gets quite political. The left hand, in this case, seems to represent Quebec. So there's the belly, the right hand, the left hand, the unidentified part, right leg, left leg, brain, heart, etc. But at one point, the right hand says, "Oh yes, it's all very well for you to be friendly. You always get the best of everything. You can afford to be gracious." And the left hand says, "Well, you are nobody to talk. You always pretend that the right hand does the most work. It's the right hand that grabs the most too, and don't think I don't notice it." And then later on, the left hand starts speaking in French. And then, of course, all the body parts come to the conclusion that, well, the belly suggests this. The belly says, "Would it not be wise, therefore, to behave like interdependent provinces, rather than as wrangling and opposed independent states?" And then they all say, "Hurrah, we're all provinces." And then the unidentified part is assigned the role of the taxpayer, and he gets crushed by the other parts, by the provinces. I laughed quite a bit at that scene. I think without the political elements and without the footnotes, I would have found this really boring, but that political satire, those amusing footnotes, are really what made it a good read for me. If you can find a copy of this, I would recommend reading it. It was quite amusing. The Masque of Aesop by Robertson Davies. Read some Canlit.